Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the Eastern Pacific 2023 hurricane season preliminary prediction number 1. There won't be graphics or numbers in this video, but I'll be doing an in-depth analysis. I know not as many of you are interested in the Eastern Pacific one, but hopefully you guys still like, and because I want to cover a wide range of topics, as well as United States weather events, which is what I usually cover. A lot of those events that I was covering in earlier videos have become more uncertain, and other events that I wanted to cover for the United States are too uncertain to cover. So this is what we're going to be covering. Hopefully you guys stick around. Without further ado, let's get started. Hopefully you can see the TV well. When I make it bigger, hopefully you can when I click on things. But anyway, sorry about that. Let's go. So to start off with the Eastern Pacific, of course, you guys have already seen this probably. The ENSO probabilities, which or maybe you haven't, it depends. But the El Nino, where the chances were the highest, that has been pushed back to August, September, October. We're going to take the first letter, A, August. So, and that's where it's the highest probability. No, my bad, July. It's very similar chances there. I did not see that. But yeah, it's been pushed back to July. Earlier in mid-December update, the highest El Nino chances were starting in May, basically meaning that El Nino was the most likely scenario by May, meaning that going into the hurricane season, that it would have already been an El Nino. Now, they have pushed that back to July, meaning, according to this scenario, it likely won't be an El Nino until July. And if this keeps getting pushed back, it could be less activity for the Eastern Pacific, more for the Atlantic, but we will see. This keeps going back and forth. But at the moment, we are definitely in a December, most likely this La Nina. And if we look at these probabilities here, you see, I don't know if you can see these numbers well. Please comment if you can or cannot. I can make it a setup to where it's closer to the TV if I ever do this again, so you guys can see the numbers. But with the graphics, which is going to be the majority of this video, I think hopefully you guys are seeing this well, which I think you are. But I will just tell you the numbers if you can't see them. July, we see 46 El Nino. That is the highest chance. 44 neutral, 10 La Nina. And also, guys, sorry for that explanation just here. I just want to tell you guys a little bit about this new setup that I just did, and knowing that there will be some complications since I'm changing it a bit, but I'll still do screen recordings and stuff. Anyway, moving on. El Nino 51, neutral 38, and of course La Nina 11. So definitely decreasing. Now we see DJF, which is December, and I guess into January now, 95% chance of a La Nina. Now, of course, El Nino was expected by maybe March a couple months ago, and this keeps getting pushed back. So, yeah. So let's go back here for a second. Sorry, let's change here. So we do see a lot of different scenarios. Now, our three main things are the dynamical average, the statistical average, and the CPC console. Of course, we got all the things here. Now, we got, of course, ENSO predictions from the 2022 and 2021 to December 2022 is when those ended. So, yeah, those are not accurate, of course. But, yeah, this thing has a lot to offer, but we're going to be looking at this. So, the dynamical average is the red, statistical average is the green, the bold green one, and the bold blue one right here is the CPC console, which is what they're basing the forecast off of. I'm explaining this so you guys know what's going on, by the way. Hopefully you do. If not, it's perfectly fine. But yeah, anyway, dynamical average, you see it says there, and then CPC console, statistical average. Now, we do see the dynamical average, and that's not the dynamical average. There we go. It's gone. There we go. Sorry, took me a second. But, sorry about that. I'm fairly new to this one, but you see that the dynamical average takes it pretty high into El Nino. You see it takes it to almost 1 at the peak of the season. Now, this would be very good for the Eastern Pacific. But if we look at the CPC console, we see they're mainly staying low and neutral. They never actually reach El Nino on here. This dotted line up here, if you can't see it, that's when it marks El Nino. And this one down here is when it marks La Nina. So negative 0.5 to 0.5 is neutral. So they're showing that El Nino probabilities are highest, starting to get higher by July, but they're still very uncertain about it. And statistical average is probably what they're mainly basing this off of. So they go up to about maybe negative 0.1, sorry. So yeah, they're staying pretty low. Now, if we look at the majority of these models, let's just get out of this for a second. We see the majority of the year is right here, and the majority of them stay in neutral and for most of it, and then a good chunk of them go into El Nino towards August and September. That's really it. So let's go to climatology for the Eastern Pacific. Also, I am noticing on the camera, I don't know if it's seen here, there is some yellow shading. I don't know if it's happening commonly or something. Maybe something wrong with this light. Like I said, there's going to be some problems since the first time I'm doing it was the setup. But the yellow light shouldn't be bothering, hopefully, guys. And hopefully it isn't messing with the graphics. Hopefully it's still perfectly fine. But yeah, anyway. Of course, we got the Atlantic, 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes, but we have the Eastern Pacific. So we see most of these systems happen June to November, but of course it starts in May. This one, yeah, it just happened again, a little color messed up, but I'm explaining it, so it shouldn't be too bad because I'm explaining this stuff to you, especially when we're on graphics. But June, we see here June 10th to June 24th is when we see our first 2 systems for the Eastern Pacific. And then we start to see hurricanes in June as well. And major hurricanes we start in July, so fairly much earlier than the Atlantic. And we see major hurricanes July to October, hurricanes June to October, named systems June to November. So yeah, definitely more active than the Atlantic. And if we look at the Eastern Pacific, we see it's fairly spread out. It's this bottom one right here. Hurricanes and tropical storms is this red. This yellow is just hurricanes. So we see unlike the Atlantic, which is a peak in September, you see there, the Eastern Pacific, you see, is more spread out. Now, of course, there's more activity in the months of July to October, especially in between here around August. But it's much more spread out. And at points of interest, this is up till 2015. That's a little bit outdated. And that's the Atlantic. And we're not doing the Central Pacific because even in above average seasons, it's really never active there. And most people are never looking at the Central Pacific. More people look at the Eastern Pacific. Hopefully I didn't break the TV there. But Eastern and Central Pacific named storms and hurricanes. It goes into the Central Pacific a bit, but we're going to be focusing on the Eastern Pacific here. We see for June and July is the bottom one. We see for June named storms are a good possibility. More for the coast as well, we see there. The coastline, southern Mexico coastline. And as well, same for hurricanes. And it seems more hurricanes have actually occurred than tropical storms in the Eastern Pacific in June. So that's interesting. July, not a little bit less for the coast. So more storms really form near the coast in June. That's how most systems hit land in the Eastern Pacific. But they can also go out and then curve to hit, say, the Baja California. But, yeah. So we could have some storms hit land. I'll get the tracks later when we get to models. But we see that for named storms, a little bit less for the coastline. But we see these storms more out to sea. Eastern Pacific is usually more out to sea storms, like I said. And for hurricanes, pretty much the same situation there. Now, if we look at August and September, we see that the coastline for tropical storms, a much wider area, as well as it going to Hawaii much more. And same with hurricanes, and they're pretty much the same probabilities because Eastern Pacific usually has stronger storms and it's a much wider basin, less storms hitting land, which can be good. But yeah, near the coast is where the storms form off the Baja California and Mexican coast, but they're usually far enough to where they don't really give them any impacts and go off, so you don't really focus on land impacts there, you just focus on the storm itself. Kind of like a system in the Atlantic forming in the MDR, then going out to sea. But yeah, similar situation. Now, September's storms for land start getting higher chance in an average season. We see tropical storms out to Hawaii, but we don't focus there. And we see storms still forming off mainly and going out to sea, same as hurricanes. But we see the green here for the Baja California and Mexican coast and a larger blue area shows that we could have some systems hitting land, but even more going out to sea. Either way, it'll be interesting to see what systems do, and I will track them whether they hit land or not. Same with hurricanes, except there's even greater risk for hurricanes than tropical storms, it seems, in the Baja California, meaning you're more likely to be hit by a hurricane than a lesser, weaker tropical storm in September. In October and November starts to die down. Let's just see November, pretty much dead. Storms might go out to sea, but it's pretty much it. And there's larger blue area, larger land threat for the Eastern Pacific here, meaning there is a minor threat there in the blue, but storms mainly go out to sea. And yeah, but for hurricanes, like I said, it's even greater risk than a tropical storm in October. See green here, and it's only blue here, which basically shows the amount of storms that have gone through that area, in simple terms, basically. Now, if we go to CFS monthly, and we are going to go to the MSLP anomaly. Now, there's a high pressure here, but that's not going to stick around, is it? So, we're just going to have to look at these blues and reds. Reds means greater pressure. It's probably going to go away from that area or not going to get us close. Blue, it's vice versa. There's less pressure there. It's more likely to go through that area. Now, if we just going to skip to May here, that's when their season starts. Well, just beforehand, April, there's above average pressure in pretty much all regions, but since there's more pressure on land, storms are likely going to go out to sea. Now, if we get to May, we see a little more pressure here, so storms are probably going to be pushed off a bit, and also Eastern Pacific hurricane season starts on May 15th. Advisories for the Atlantic start on May 15th, but the official season doesn't start till June 1st there. But since there's more pressure here, storms are probably still going to go out to sea in May. Now, in June, something interesting happens. There was a little high pressure here system, so storms are probably going to be pushed away from this part of the Mexican coast, but they're still, it's a pretty weak high, and it's not really having an effect on systems, and there's overall less pressure over Mexico. So if a low were to form, it shows a low here. This is just one of those big lows, pressure systems, that not one of those that would bring you like rain or severe weather or something like that. But we see the system will have an easier time going to the Mexican coast, but also since there's less pressure off the coast too, they'll have also an easier time going out to sea. So overall less pressure. Now, a storm would have in July, so that we were just looking at June. In July, when we're starting to get more activity, there's a high here, more pressure, but since there's less pressure over the Baja California and less pressure for much of this region, or just average pressure, the systems could easily go through the coast or just through the Baja California or even out to Hawaii because there's much less pressure over here. And like I said, that goes back to these colors, which show you how likely it is of a storm hitting places. So this is kind of like, sure, this shows just the amount of storms that have gone through the area, but it's kind of also like a risk factor. So yeah. And it's a little harder without a high pressure for the Eastern Pacific still. But yeah. August, much higher pressure systems that form are likely to go out to sea, but since there's less pressure for Hawaii, they are at some greater risk there. It's not a big risk because even with a greater risk, Hawaii's at a pretty low risk. But now there is a bit less pressure here, so a storm could theoretically, if it's close enough to the coast, slip through and go to the Baja California. Now, September, above average pressure here, low pressure is likely to go out to sea. October, much less pressure. If a system forms, it can easily, and there's more pressure here. Average pressure here, but it's more than these areas. So a system could easily go to the Mexican coast, to the Baja California. Now, if we look at CAN-SIPS, then we're going to look at April. We see, April, that's February. April, we have much less pressure. So if a system was to form in April, which is unlikely, it would easily be able to go here. Or it could, if it's far enough out, it would go out to sea. May, much less pressure we see here. So a system would easily be able to go into the southern Mexican coast or to the Baja California. So by the looks of it, we could see an above average risk this hurricane season for the Baja California Peninsula. Now, it's a little too hard to say which part of the Baja California Peninsula. It's kind of like a straight line, you see. So systems can easily just go up the coast or straight into it. And it's also hard to say which part of the Mexican coast because systems can go right into it or just stay off the coast and you slide through it. But overall, we're seeing potentially an above average risk, higher risk for the Baja California and southern Mexican coast. It seems. June, lower risk for lower pressure for the Mexican area, so systems could easily go through to Mexico. There, that was a weird position. Anyway, sorry, the way I stood. July, much less pressure in the Mexico region as well as the Baja California. So a system could, if it curves, it could easily go to the Baja California or Mexico. It could also go in between, this little in-between area, but more than likely then it would eventually go into the Baja California, which is going back to what I said earlier, which would count as a Baja California system. So yeah. August, much less pressure for Mexico and the Baja California. If a system forms here, and there's a little more pressure here, it can easily go up north, creating a much bigger land threat for those areas. But at the same time, the pressure gradient, to the high here, it's kind of pushing it away from, we see the Baja California due to another high up here. So due to that, systems might get pushed down and away from land, which is good. Hopefully you understood what I just said. Basically, it's there's another high interfering that's not shown on this map, is what I'm saying. September, much below average pressure. Systems can still easily go into the Baja California or Mexico or go out to sea. But then again, systems usually go out to sea even with below average pressure. So while there might be an above average risk for these areas, which they usually get at least one system a year, both of them, they each got, I forgot the exact amount, but they each got at least one this year, the Baja California and coastal Mexico area. So yeah, coastal southern Mexico. So, but system will still likely go out to sea more often, but there still is an above average risk. Same with the Atlantic. There can be an above average risk for the coastline, but still most storms will likely go out to sea. Unless we're talking about 2020, which, that's a little crazy. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Anyway, below average pressure gradient. We see systems can still go out to sea easily, basically the same thing there. And November, if a system does form much below average pressure here, that would almost indefinitely go into the Baja California or southern Mexican coast. But that is unlikely. So now we're going to go back to CFS monthly, and we're going to look at the monthly temperature outlook. So we're going to start with April. We do see here above average precipitation near Baja California and Mexican coast. So that could show more low pressures going through the area. Above average precipitation, a lot above average we see for the Eastern Pacific, but below average by land. So that can mean, according to the CFS, in May, less systems hitting land. In June, we could see, in June, we do see a lot above average precipitation on the Mexican coast. So that can mean more systems will hit the Mexican coast as the systems form. But of course, systems like they form out here too. Majority will. Now in July, below average precipitation near the Mexican coast, but of course above average precipitation for the Eastern Pacific. So more storms overall forming. Now, but there's higher precipitation near the Baja California area, so that could mean more storms are going through there. The same situation is actually taking place with August. Same with September and October. Pretty much everywhere is above average, right below the Mexican coast. CFS shows, meaning that the October is like the final month. It really starts to calm down. But if a system would form, there is a good chance it would go into the Baja California or Mexican coast areas. We see them right here highlighted. So now if we go to the canned sips, we see April, much above average precipitation for the Eastern Pacific. Same thing with May. June, southern Mexican coast into the Baja California, above average precipitation. Again, Mexican coast gets scraped a lot but not hit, so we might have a lot of those. But I'm talking about actual landfalls here. July, same thing as in like May, where it's pretty much mainly average precipitation. August, above average precipitation across the Eastern Pacific, Mexican coast. Below average precipitation in September along the Mexican coast, but across the Eastern Pacific is above average. Most of the Mexican coast, Eastern Pacific, is above average precipitation in October. And finally, November, off the coast of Mexico is above average precipitation. And the final thing we're gonna look at here is here. I just want to take you guys through the shear anomaly quickly. Above average shear, below average shear is blue, and above average shear is red. So we do see April, May, below average shear. June, July, slightly below average shear. August, September, and October, and as average shear, CANSIP shows. And then November shows a below average shear. And for the CFS monthly, it's April above average shear, May above average shear, June average shear around we see in this area, July near the coast below average shear. We have a little area of above average shear, and then Eastern Pacific we have below average shear again. So August, below average shear for the outer Eastern Pacific, which is where most storms are going to be. Same with September and October, except October is much more shear. And this goes back, like I said, when I said most storms scrape the Mexican coast, sometimes we do see that here. We do see that here, highlighted in blue and green. They can also scrape and go up into the the Baja California Peninsula, but it usually happens less often for them. But yeah, definitely more storms scrape the Baja California and Mexican coast. And anyway, so after that, one last thing we're going to do is the sea surface temperatures anomaly. So for CFS, basically, it's pretty much it. For pretty much the whole season, they're showing above average temperatures. As the season progresses, more above average temperatures by the coast. And CANSIPs here, pretty much above average precipitation and above average sea surface temperatures. And as the season progresses, of course, more above average temperatures here, and it stays pretty much the same by the coast. Anyway, guys, I hope that video was informative. So basically, our rundown here, sorry about that, is for the southern Mexican coast and Baja California area. There will be above average landfalls, or systems scraping the areas. So basically, more system effects. There will be less shear and above average precipitation from these systems. And based on steering, there could be an above average threat for Hawaii. There will be more storms, it seems, especially due to above average temperatures and the below average shear that was shown. And like I said, the Baja California area has to watch out. Southern Mexican coast has to watch out. Systems, majority of systems will still go out to sea though. And we don't have numbers yet, but I don't have numbers yet. But we could also have the stronger systems likely go out to sea. We might see 1 or 2 hurricanes hit the southern Mexican coast. Again, the southern Mexican coast is definitely an above average risk. Baja California area too, but especially the southern Mexican coast is an above average risk for tropical cyclones this year. It's a little too early to go into strengths, but yeah, that's pretty much the rundown. So I'll keep you guys updated. I hope I explained enough. Hopefully the setup works. Any comments, please leave them down below. Have a great day, guys. Goodbye.